landing a few very good shots to her opponent, now the Argentinian fighter. So from this moment, I think that this fight will be over after just 2 rounds. And it will be by a pretty wide margin. And this fight is over. Heading back to the respective corners. And I don't think there will be too much to talk about. The judges still discussing. And apparently they do have to go for another round. I have to admit, I'm a bit surprised by that. Apparently the judges assessed this fight much different from what I saw. And so obviously the fighters will have to go for yet another round. And here we go for round number 3 between Argentina and Japan. Japan on the left-hand side now, Argentina on the right-hand side. And the Argentinian fighter now really going at it, trying to land a few good shots. But she seems to be opening up a little too much for counter shots right now. She's taking a few hard hits by the Japanese fighter. And a kick now that went into thin air. I have the feeling that the Japanese fighter can actually turn this fight around in this 3rd round. Good shots to the legs. Apparently the Argentinian corner is not happy with their captain's strategy. And the fight is stopped. Referees in between them.
And for list number 2, we would like to call Poland and Luxembourg.
Now we'll have to wait and see what the judge's decision is.
Japan is to prepare.
Apparently there's some problem on the right foot of the Japanese fighter that's being worked on at the moment.
Chyba zanosi się na to, że może być jeszcze jedna dogrywka. Zobaczymy.
Referees talking to the judges.
Japan.
And if I'm judging correctly, that means the fight is over. Yes, definitely looks like it. A last bit of hairstyling for Argentina's captain. And now we're curious about who's won this. I'm giving it to Argentina by a small margin, but this is a fight that could really go either way. And the winner is Japan. The winner is Japan. I've been proven wrong. This was one of those fights that can really go either way. From the first round, I probably gave to Argentina. 2nd round, a draw. And the 3rd round, obviously a win for Japan. very impressive view over Malbork Castle. As the rain continues to drip down, we can see the drops on the camera every now and then.
All right, the next pair is Poland versus England.
If I heard it correctly, the next fight should be Poland versus England.
And for
Polish fighters on the list already.
List 2, we have Luxembourg versus Poland again.
In front of her home crowd.
Dwie walki, gdzie biorą udział nasi reprezentanci, więc to będzie dosyć ciekawe starcie.
And her English opponent will be joining the list. Oh, she's already there. So the next fight on list number 1, England versus Poland. England in the white tabard with a red cross, Poland in the straight red surcoat. And here we go.
I proszę Państwa, ruszyły.
And a harsh start to this fight by the English fighter. She's trying to close the distance, and her Polish opponent landing a few good shots to her body and her legs. Very aggressive start. Good footwork by both fighters. Trying to bring in the legs, trying to land a kick or two. Now 3-4 good shots by the Polish fighter on her opponent. And now she's up in the corner trying to break loose, which she manages to do. A few good shots now to the head of the Polish fighter at the hands of her English opponent. And up against the fence again. And the ref is going to break this up in a second. Yes, he does. And that is the end of round number 1. Poland versus England. Poland on the right-hand side, England on the left in this view. And on list number 2, I saw a Luxembourg fighter getting ready.
Prosimy reprezentanta z Polski do szrank numer 2 do eliminacji dla mężczyzn. Cały czas nie mamy naszego reprezentanta w drugich szrankach.
Unfortunately, we have no view of the list number 2 at the moment, as I saw that there was a Luxembourg fighter in the list. As we're waiting for England versus Poland to recommence with the second round.
Do drugich szranek prosimy.
So here we're going again. Just a couple of seconds before the second round starts. Poland ready, England ready, and I think we can go on. And here we go. England now on the left-hand side, Poland on the right. And Poland on list number 2. The Luxembourgian fighter trying to advance as quickly as he can on this slippery ground. Very tricky conditions, particularly in the duel. We saw with the Polish fighter just now, who has problems maintaining his stance.
10 sekund jeszcze zostało. Bardzo ładna wymiana
And a
ciosów.
decision is imminent on list number 1. And the win on list number 1 has gone to Poland! In front of the home crowd, yet another win for Poland. a close fight. And I would not say it was an undeserved victory after 3 hard rounds.
And up next for the women's
On list number 2, we are already in the break again.
Will be Quebec.
The fighters are back in their respective
Japan.
corners.
And preparing is South Africa versus Argentina.
And on list number 2, we have a winner, and the winner is
I tutaj
Poland!
też, proszę Państwa, zwyciężył Polak. Wielkie brawa. And up next for the men's competition will be Lithuania versus Japan.
And on list number 1, we can see the next fighter getting ready. If I've seen correctly, that's Japan versus Quebec now. Nasty fighter from Japan getting into the list again. And on the right-hand side on the list, list number 2, we have Japan versus Lithuania.
Nasza dzielna reprezentantka Japonii, a z drugiej strony reprezentantka Quebecu. Tu zaś widać, mamy tutaj Litwę oraz
Here we go with Japan versus Lithuania. Japan in white with a red dot, Lithuania in
bardzo
dark
egzotyczne starcie
red.
będzie.
Slow and very cautious start for both. Trying to look for an opening in their opponent's guard. And on list number 1, now the fight between Quebec and Japan has
Bardzo taka,
commenced.
można powiedzieć, solidna wymiana ciosów. Miecze bardzo ładnie dźwięczą. Nie wiem,
Very
czy to
quick strikes by
słyszycie,
the
ale
Lithuanian fighter now.
tutaj słychać bardzo dobrze.
Hard shots to the head of his Japanese opponent.
Obydwaj wprowadzają ciosy, obydwaj trafiają. Bardzo solidne uderzenie ze strony Japończyka. Jednak rycerz z Litwy nie pozostaje dłużny też, także naprawdę bardzo ładna, wyrównana walka.
On list number 1, a takedown for the Quebec fighter. Her Japanese opponent is on the ground.
Japonka została powalona na ziemię przez dziewczynę z Quebecu.
Getting back to her feet now. And the fight may
Tu
recommence.
mamy jeszcze 10 sekund. Bardzo mocne i potężne ciosy.
List number 2, you're not missing out on anything. The fighters are in their corners for the intermission.
I stop.
And that is the case as well now on list number 1. End of the round, end of the first round. Fighters are heading back to their respective corners. Some checks done on the armor of the Japanese fighter.
Tutaj za chwilę wznawiamy walkę, jeszcze kilka sekund przerwy.
Just to see whether everything is in order after this first round.
I za 10 sekund wznawiamy kolejną rundę.
And Japan and Lithuania are recommencing
I tu
their
naprawdę
fight
poszło
now
agresywnie
on
do
list
przodu,
number
bardzo
2.
solidna wymiana ciosów.
Just look at that speed and strength.
Ale piękne uderzenie.
And on list number 1 now, Quebec and Japan recommencing as well.
Tu dziewczyny nie pozostawiają dłużne. Równie mocno walczą. Piękny obrót ze strony
These two
Japonki,
guys are
może
really
nieco zatrafiony,
striking it
ale
out now. A
bardzo ładny
slugfest
pomysł
here at list number 2. Lithuania, as I said, in dark red, Japan in white. And this round is over between Lithuania and Japan, and we are heading straight back to Quebec versus Japan. And the last 10 seconds of this second round. Not very much happening here anymore, I think. The ref's gonna stop it. Time's up. Back to the respective corners. And we have a decision on list number 2, I think. The helmets are coming off. And we're still in the break. In Japan versus Quebec. So we can head back to list number 2 and find out who the winner is in this bout between Lithuania and Japan. And the winner of this fight is Lithuania.
Wygrywa to starcie Litwa po bardzo równej walce.
And back on list number 1 with Quebec versus Japan. These two are heading into the third round of their clash.
Tu natomiast czeka nas trzecia runda.
Quebec on the left-hand side, Japan on the right, Quebec in white and blue, Japan in white with a red dot.
Tutaj naprawdę solidne ciosy,
Hard
jakie
shots
prowadzą
being
drużyna z Quebecu.
exchanged here. Both women score in this exchange.
And the next one up in the male competition.
But I have the impression that the
will
Quebec
be
fighter is just a tad bit
Austria
fresher.
versus Quebec.
And her Japanese opponent is on the ground again. Takedown for
Tutaj
Quebec.
niestety reprezentantka Japonii leży na ziemi. 30 sekund zostało jeszcze.
And I think this will put an end to the ambitions of the Japanese fighter in this match. The last few seconds in this fight.
10 sekund, piękne uderzenie w górę.
And a few hard shots to the head of the Japanese fighter. And another hard shot. She seems dazed, she's confused, I think. And there comes the referee to her rescue. And that is quite obviously, I think, the end of this fight. And if I'm not completely mistaken, then Quebec can only be the winner. And I think she's been hurt. She's holding her arm. I think she took a shot to the left arm. Let's hope she's all right.
My tymczasem czekamy na kolejnych zawodników w szrankach mężczyzn.
And I think we have a decision. Yes, we have. The ref signals off with the helmet. And the Japanese fighter seems to be all right. She's working on her helmet herself. Although the visor won't come open for some reason.
I będzie werdykt podany przez sędziów.
And the winner of this fight is Quebec.
Wygrywa Quebec. Brawo!
Strong display by the Quebec fighter. She's dominated her opponent, particularly in the later rounds of this match.
And the next pair up in women's fighting competition
And while Argentina
South
is
Africa
marching up on
versus
list number 1
Argentina.
for the next fight, On list number 2,
And the team
we
that
can see
prepares
the
is
fighter from
Poland versus
Quebec, I
the
think,
United
if I'm not
States.
mistaken. And I think I've seen an Austrian flag over there as well. In the next women's duel, the opponent for the Argentinian fighter, which we've seen just before, is going to be South Africa. And that is not the fight between Argentina and South Africa, that is Quebec and Austria. Austria in black with the red and white stripes. Quebec in white and light blue. And off we go in the duel between men of Quebec and Austria.
A my
I
tymczasem
think the women
rozpoczynamy
of
kolejny
Argentina and South Africa are
pojedynek
going to take another second or two, so we can stick with this fight for a while.
między reprezentantem Quebecu
Please remember, we're already in the elimination stage. The winner of this fight goes through, the loser goes out. Good shots by the Austrian. Very quick fighter, Joji Ishikawa.
Jeszcze 30 sekund zostało do końca rundy, połowa minuty już minęła. A z drugiej strony mamy
And on list number 1, the fight between Argentina and South Africa has started now.
RWA. Przeciwko Argentynie.
And the fighter from Austria signals to his opponent that his gauntlet is apparently falling apart. Well, at least that looked like it was the signal he gave.
Obie nie pozostają sobie dłużne w
And
zasadzie.
we're back
Walka
in
jest taka dosyć
list
mocno
number 1 with South Africa
brutalna.
versus Argentina, and that does not look good for the South African fighter. She takes a lot of shots. Oh, hard shot.
Jak widać, proszę Państwa, kobiety w swojej zawziętości nie ustępują mężczyznom.
The Argentinian fighter really felt that one.
Wyprowadzają równie
But
agresywne
her moves
ciosy,
just look so
równie mocno
slow.
napierają do
I
przodu.
think her sword is very, very heavy in comparison to her opponent's weapon.
I wielkie
But if she
brawa,
does
proszę
hit,
Państwa,
the
dla
hits
nich siłą
definitely
ciężkie,
hurt.
ciężkie miecze. I stop.
And that's the end of
Bardzo
round
pięknie,
number 1,
bardzo solidna walka, naprawdę taka...
which from the few seconds that we saw, I would give to Argentina.
Krótką przerwę. Za chwilę
But that,
będzie
of course, is a
kolejna
rather
pomiędzy,
unqualified opinion, to be frank.
Austriakiem a przedstawicielem Quebecu.
And we're back with Quebec versus Austria. And there you can see again the green dot on the weapon. For those of you who have just tuned in, the green dots on the weapon mean that these weapons have been approved by the referees and that they may be used in the list. We will see these green dots also on the helmets, on the back of the helmet, as we see it for the Austrian fighter right now. And on pretty much every other part of equipment just as much. Very cautious begin to the second round now. Both fighters don't want to risk too much because they know what's at stake in this match.
Bardzo solidne uderzenia.
Good shots now by the Austrian fighter, particularly to the arms of his opponent. And I think he's right. It looks as though the gauntlet was actually coming apart and the Quebec fighter is on the ground. And that will have to go down to caused by the conditions. The ground is really wet and slippery by now, so it's hard to maintain your stance, particularly in historically correct leather shoes. Good shots to the legs now. But it's a very close fight. Both fighters are scoring points. And I think it will depend to a large extent on whether they decide to score the fall of the Quebec fighter as a takedown or not. And if they scored it as a takedown, I don't think that would be justified. And we're back with South Africa versus Argentina. And the Argentinian fighter just slugging away at her opponent. But if the South African fighter can actually find her target, then those shots must really hurt, because that sword looks very, very heavy. Just judging by the speed of her strikes.
30 sekund. Jeszcze.
But just look how easily the Argentinian fighter blocks her shots. Too predictable, too obvious, her motions.
10 sekund jeszcze. Widać, że dziewczyny są już trochę zmęczone, ale i tak nie dają za wygraną. I stop. Stop. Naprawdę rewelacyjna.
That's the end of this round between Argentina and South Africa. So we can go back to the fight between Austria and Quebec, which is about to recommence. And here we are on list number 2. Austria in black with red and white stripes. Quebec in white and light blue. And a few good shots to the legs now. And I can see there's been some repairs on the helmet, some emergency repairs on the helmet of the Austrian fighter. He's had problems with that before in the day, and I think he'll have to get that fixed as quickly as he can. You can also see his chainmail starts to fall apart on the left-hand side of his helmet.
10 sekund jeszcze.
And I think we have a decision on list number 1. And the winner of the bout between South Africa and Argentina is Argentina!
A wygrała reprezentantka Argentyny, proszę państwa. Wielkie brawa po naprawdę
And don't worry, you're not missing anything on list number 2. The round has just ended. The Austrian captain himself working on the helmet right now. And he doesn't seem too happy with the problems that his man is facing. Just really trying to get to keep the helmet together. And that will have to be fixed as soon as possible. And now we're waiting for a decision on list number 2. On list number 1, we can see the American fighter making her entrance. And if I'm judging correctly, her opponent should be from Poland. And apparently, Quebec and Austria will head into yet another round. Helmets are getting back on. So we don't have a winner yet in that fight.
For the next fight.
And I've been correct. The United States of America versus Poland is going to be the next fight on list number 1 in the women's category. And we're back on the list with the fight between Quebec and Austria. And it looks as though they were heading into the final or decisive round.
1 minuta.
Very cautious start to this round now. Both fighters don't want to risk too much, and they've both already got a few rounds today that they had to go through, and it looks like the Austrian fighter is a little bit more tired than his Japanese than his Quebec opponent. But a very hard shot now. And that were a few very good hits, and those will go down on the scorecard. Very hard shot. I thought we were having a timber moment there with the Quebec fighter falling like a chopped down tree. And on list number 1, the United States and Poland are starting. Poland in red, the United States in blue and red-white stripes. On list number 2, Austria and Quebec currently tied up in the clinch. And I think the ref just stopped this fight, so you're not missing anything over there. So we can stick with Poland and the United States. We're seeing a cautious start here.
Jest bardzo ciekawą pamiątką, którą warto zadbać.
Ale chyba się dziewczyny rozkręcają.
Natomiast strefa zabaw to nie jest jedyne miejsce paramediewalne, niekoniecznie poświęcone walkom sportowym. Mamy wzdłuż